introductions and engagements, and let me get this square off the screen that says "Got it" so I can see everybody, because you all are blocked when that little "Got it" box pops up. I guess you see it
You
too.
can start talking now and leading the meeting.
Okay. So I'm Marion, as you know, and I'm going to be your facilitator for this morning's discussion. And I'm going to read the Erace slogan. Eracism is the slogan of the group Erace, which was formed in New Orleans in the summer of 1993. We seek ways through person-to-person communication to show that we are committed to treating all human beings with love, respect, empathy, compassion, and humility. Erace is an organization that does not espouse any political party, and we have no religious affiliation. We believe in acceptance of all people, and no personal attacks of any kind will be tolerated. We come with the intention to learn, listen, and not to argue. And I haven't memorized the land acknowledgement, so I'm going to read it so that we may give our proper respect to our Indigenous brothers and sisters. We begin today by acknowledging that we know what we know as the United States is the ancestral and unceded territory of many Indigenous peoples, and that there are many more nations and tribes that could be named here. Members of our meeting group today on the lands of the Chitimacha and Choctaw in New Orleans, the Creeks and Cherokees in Atlanta, the Tonkawan, Lipan, Apache, and Comanche in Austin, the Lenape and Piscataway in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, the Wampanoag and Nipmac peoples in Boston, the Coahuila and Mojave in Riverside, and the Lumbee in Fayetteville. We thank their ancestors for being stewards of these lands through the generations and through today. We need to protect and honor the history and people of these places. Despite centuries of colonial theft and violence, we should always remember that we are still on Indigenous land, and it will always be Indigenous land. And with that being said, I'll be going to ask that everybody remain on mute until it's your time to speak. I'm going to keep a list, and people will be called in order by the facilitator. We raise one finger, and we ask that you wiggle your fingers to make sure I can see it. I cleaned my eyeglasses, but I'm looking here. I still got a couple of smudges on them, but I can see you. Please don't interrupt the speaker. You have 2 minutes to voice your opinion, and we ask that there not be any side comments, definitely no personal attacks, no arguing back and forth, no name calling. And as it was said in the introductory remarks, we're here to learn and listen and not to argue. If someone who's speaking says something that you don't understand, you raise 2 fingers. That's called a clarifying question. It's not a time to give your opinion, because you have the opportunity to get on the list if you want to give an opinion. Hopefully, when you ask the clarifying question, the person who's made the comment previously will be able to give you a response so that you will be able to understand what they were talking about. So with that being said, we'll go around our little discussion group and introduce ourselves. And according to my screen, starting on my extreme left, we have Phyllis.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Phyllis, and I'm in New Orleans. I've been coming to Erace since 2008. Glad to be here.
Thank you, Phyllis. Beatrice.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Beatrice. I've been coming to Erace since about 1993, 94, co-founder with my husband, Larry, of the Atlanta Erace Group, and so glad to see all of you.
Thanks, Beatrice. Nancy,
Good morning. My name is Nancy. I'm located in New Orleans and I've been coming to Erace since 2007.
thanks, Nancy. Nora,
Good morning, everybody. I'm in Austin and glad to be here. Thanks.
glad to see you, Nora. Pedro,
Good morning. I'm in Austin or outside of Austin. I've been coming to Erace for, this is my third year, I believe. So good morning and looking forward as always. Thank you.
thank you, Pedro. Jean,
You would do that. I'm just having breakfast. I'm late as usual. I'm Jean. I'm in Silver Spring, Maryland, and I've been coming to Erace in New Orleans since 2022. And
good to
I'm
see you,
looking forward
Jean.
to the discussion.
Should have saved you for last so you could finish swallowing your breakfast. Go ahead.
You know,
Louise,
Did you say Louise?
yes, Louise,
Oh, hey, yes, that's me. And I've been coming to Erace on and off for 2 decades. Started in New Orleans and now in Austin. And I just want to say thank you to the person that invented Zoom.
oh, yes. Thanks, Louise. Larry,
Good morning, I'm Larry. Glad to be here this morning. Welcome.
glad to see you, Larry. Bill,
I'm Bill Ives, and I am suffering from a bad cold. Fortunately, we went to the urgent care, and it's not COVID, it's not the flu. It's just a common cold, but I may not talk as much as I usually do. So Cindy's joining us in a second, too. I look forward to the discussion. It's one that we're glad to see the Austin people. You heard about the massive power outage in Austin. We were not sure you were going to be able to attend. So it's nice to see you guys.
yes, it is. Thanks, Bill. Hope you feel better. Leonetta,
Good morning. Time for me to introduce myself. Oh, okay. Okay. My name's Lanetta. I'm in New Orleans, and I've been a member of Erace since I was an intern in college. I don't know why my thing is doing that. Let me get off.
it wasn't just you, Leonetta. We had, I had that video, audio mess too.
Yeah.
Glenn,
Peace be unto everyone. It's Glenn Abdullah, and looking forward to today's meeting.
thank you, Glenn. Okay, as I said a couple of seconds ago, glad to see everyone. And let's keep in mind our rules and proper decorum so we can have a great meeting, which I'm sure it's going to be. Excuse me. I chose this topic because there was some kerfluffle about this man who's the governor of Florida. And my feathers were ruffled because there was this brouhaha about Black History Month. I remember when there used to be a Black History Week. And when I got more mature and able to understand what this was all about, I said, a week just to talk about the contributions our Black brothers and sisters made to this country. So when it was extended for a month, the shortest month in the year, which some people, all of you are aware of, I was glad about that. So when, as I said, when this brouhaha came up about this man possibly rejecting this Black history course for high school students, the advanced placement course, I was very much interested in addressing this and looking forward to bring it to the group, because I remember I worked at a school for 28 years, and when Martin Luther King came into focus, I was able to get his black and white photo along with about 20 other prominent Black people who had made significant contributions to this country. But at the time, I put his picture up first on the school bulletin board, and every day someone would come and take that picture down. So I went to the principal, very nice man. He was a white man. And when we had our school assembly and he was making the morning announcements, he said, I'd like to address the teachers and the students. He said, please don't take down I was Davis then. He said, please don't take down Miss Davis's photo of Martin Luther King. So you heard some coughing and clearing of throats. So we had a gentleman who was a custodian on the staff. He got on a 12-foot ladder and put Dr. King's photo above a door in the school basement where the assembly was. And for the rest of the Black History Month, that photo did not come down. Later on, I was able to get about 20 more photos, black and white, on very stiff board, called corrugated, not corrugated, stiff cardboard. And my white colleagues were very surprised. Oh, I didn't know all these Black people did these significant things. So the photos did not come down off the bulletin board, and Dr. King's picture remained at the top of the heap. So when this, as I said, kerfuffle started about Ron DeSantis saying that the students were not going to have this Black history course, this aroused my curiosity, and I decided that I would submit this for our topic for discussion this morning. So with that being said, I was trying to give you all a chance to who perhaps would like to be the first person. And as I said, I'm trying to wipe my eyeglasses so I can see, because they are smudgy, even though I cleaned them with the eyeglass tissue. Okay, let me get my little list started. So Beatrice is going to be first. Larry, did you raise your hand? I saw your hand sort of flop up. No, okay. Beatrice.
All right, I take a lot of exception to Ron DeSantis just in general, but for him to assume a position of deciding what are radical political perspectives, and this is a quote, that failed to capture the spectrum of Black public opinion. Where does he come from? Who makes him the decider on this issue in the first place? And it seems that he was talking about law and order. And so the next couple of paragraphs down, next couple of points down, he says, African Americans like law and order like everyone else. And that the implication that abolition prisons, which is one of the issues in this AP course, was part of the course. He's trying to make the point that African Americans are not interested in that. First of all, how do you know that? That's the first, and who has appointed you as the person to decide? The other point is, from what perspective do you determine that something is indoctrination, posing as, his words, impartial academic pursuit? his whole issue is concerning. His whole issue with these courses, the things that he's talking about, intersectionality, queer theory, but all of the issues with which he has concern, he has decided are indoctrination. He has decided that Black people don't want this. Who are you? Who appointed you in charge of this? You're not even an educator. Go, as my usual, go sit down and try to solve the social issues of the state of Florida, healthcare, or all of that kind. Do what you're supposed to be doing. I find concern, and I'm also concerned, although the people who put up the pilot course are claiming that what he said had nothing to do with it, that what they had put out was an outline of, and now what they've got now, which has left out some of his concerns, are not related to him. They did it at a bad time. It makes it look like his issues affected how the course would be presented. So that's concerning. But I just stay out of it. Just stay, the banning of the books, the deciding what children need to read and not read. All of those issues are, especially where it concerns African-American people, are extremely concerning, because you are narrowing, not just for African-American children, all children need to know the full history of this country, the good, the bad, the ugly, and so on. And so I am very concerned, Mr. DeSantis. If he runs for president, I would like to not vote for him 10,000 times. If he can put a not vote in, that's what I want to put, a not vote.
Thank you, Beatrice. Phyllis, do you have a clock or something you could help me keep time, because
People can never
Oh.
hear my phone.
okay. Louise,
Yes, yes, I can.
Could you
I
please?
can do that. I'll have to
All
go
right.
get it, but I'll do my phone for now. Yes.
All right, thank you. I
Are
appreciate that.
are you recognizing my hand?
Glenn,
Oh, you jumped, Glenn. I didn't see you. You were on the lower portion of my screen. Now you're up at the top and I didn't see you. I have it now. I have your name. You're on the list. Thank you, Beatrice. You voiced some of my
Bill
sentiments.
has a finger up. And
Bill?
Cindy,
And
All
I
right.
think you got me, didn't you?
I have
Marion?
Louise. In fact, you're next, Louise.
Oh, okay.
Followed by Phyllis.
Alrighty. Sorry, just starting my time. So got a lot to talk about really, but my main thing is the Black History Month, as you were talking about, used to be a Black History Week. The fact is, if they taught history properly, we wouldn't have to have that. It seems weird that they have to have a little section because it's missed out in our proper education. We do not cover Black history at all in elementary schools or middle schools, any public schools. It's a very lame excuse for history, as far as I'm concerned. Very tainted. DeSantis, yes, what a beep he is. And how can he? Yeah, he has no jurisdiction over that. Why are they not talking to teachers, gathering teachers? And I don't know, it's too big an issue. I just basically wanted to say about the Black History Month, I've always thought that was so lame, so lame that they would. And then Indigenous Day or Indigenous Week, come on, man, this should be our history that we're all learning and hearing about all the time, not just for a week or a month. And I find it very frightening, Marion, that someone took down the picture of Martin Luther King. I mean, that's disturbing. Someone in a school
In the school.
yes, that's
Several
educating
times they
children.
did it. They
That's
did it several
educating
times.
children, that there's someone there that finds that so offensive. That's very, very frightening. We need to scare all of those kinds of teachers out of the schools, the school systems. We do not need them teaching children. So they're the ones that are inflicting the harm, not people who are teaching real history. By the way, Larry's hand is up. And my time is up.
All right, Larry, I have you. Thank you,
Hey,
Louise.
can you hear that?
Yes,
Can you hear that?
I can hear
All
it.
right.
Thank you. Phyllis, everybody, can you hear the ding, ding, ding? All right, Phyllis.
So first I want to say that we should move forward knowing that when someone uses the word woke, they are using that as a dog whistle to the conservative base, and it really means Black people. It doesn't mean liberal white people. They are totally targeting African Americans and other people of color. And you know, Ron DeSantis, I don't know if anybody knows this yet, but he's totally destroying a very queer friendly college in Florida, and I can't think of the name of it. He's also taking over the board that makes decisions about the AP program. And you know, Florida is becoming a model fascist state in the United States under his leadership. And if he does run for president, as Beatrice stated, you know, he's going to try to out-Trump Trump. And we should all be very afraid. I'm just thoroughly disgusted with the people in this country who can be so easily swayed by this BS that these people spew. He's a fascist. He's just against any kind of freedom for anybody, unless you're a cis het white male, Christian as well. And, you know, I should say Christian. And I'm hoping that some scandal rocks his candidacy so that he will not be considered a viable candidate. But I don't know what the Republicans would consider that kind of a scandal these days, because they seem to accept anybody who can get them the power that they are hungry for. And that is my sermon of the day, maybe. Thank you.
Feel free, get back on the list. Thank you, Phyllis. Glenn?
Well, first of all, you had to look at the census, not really believing in what he's talking about. He really don't believe in it. He's a demagogue. He finds out what you want, then he say he stands for that. If it was the other way around, if there were more votes to be gotten for being standing up for African American rights, he would be a person standing up for African American rights. So he just don't look at him as being a real goal. What he had, what he's going after. All the things he has done has nothing to do with his beliefs. He has no character. He has no principles. So if you think you're dealing with a person that really believes in destroying African American history, not having African American history, you're looking at it in the wrong way. That's my opinion.
All right, Glenn, thank you. Bill?
I agree with everything Glenn said, except the fact that DeSantis doesn't believe in the racist dogma that he spews out of his mouth, because he was a history teacher at one time. And I've read that he taught the Confederate view of the Civil War. He's been a racist for a long time before he became governor. But I also agree with what Glenn said. He has no moral scruples. He will do whatever he can to get elected. And now he feels that, as people have said, he needs to out-Trump Trump. I wanted to add a little bit of context to what Phyllis said. My cousin went to New College in Sarasota, Florida, the one that DeSantis is trying to remake. And New College was set up to be a very liberal college, small college, but they wanted to be, quote, the Harvard of the South, but in a much smaller scale. So New College is very liberal in its outlook. And now he's trying to totally subvert that founding principle and by turning into a fascist college. If someone wants to see, I've been watching the Star Wars show Andor, and it's a perfect illustration of what a fascist state would look like. So if someone wants to see the future of fascism, they can watch Andor, and the empire is taken over. And anyway, I just recommend that. But DeSantis is a horrible person. And I'll end with that note.
Thank you, Bill. We have Cindy and Larry on the list. Is anybody else?
Glenn,
Okay,
you're not seeing my hand being raised.
you've jumped on the screen again because I have your name checked off at the top of the list as
And
previously.
Phyllis.
Phyllis is going to follow Glenn. All right. Anyone else? All right. Cindy?
I have to make sure is, okay. I'm never sure which way the buttons work. I taught in New Orleans for 30 some years in mostly, as you know, public schools, mostly all Black or almost all Black until the last one. And it was an interesting progression. The first school I taught in back in the mid-70s, there were 2 white teachers besides me who were what I call missionary types. They very much appeased. They talked the white power thing, which was really kind of frightening coming from these little old, I don't know, 60, 70-year-olds, and this was when I was young. But how those kids interpreted coming from these white older ladies, and then mostly I didn't interact with them because I was working with handicapped kids then. But they knew me and they saw me on the playground. And then the next school where I taught was much more progressive. It was also later in time, out in Gentilly. That school had a pretty positive relationship between white and Black. The kids were treated fairly. It was quite a mixed school. I don't know proportions, but it was a healthy mix, probably 60-40 or something like that. And then the last school turned out to be Lusher, which is no longer Lusher. Okay, which was mostly white. Different experiences. I'll stop. Save it for
Okay.
later.
Cindy, feel free to raise your finger again.
I
Make
will.
sure you wiggle it around and I'll put you back on the list. We have Larry, Glenn, Phyllis, and Beatrice. So Larry, it's your turn.
Thank you. Louise raised the concern, that is common or used to be common. That is, if they taught history as it's supposed to be taught, there wouldn't be a need for African American history or Black history. But contrary to that, they're not going to teach history as it is supposed to be taught. When I was coming up junior high school, the history books would make reference to Jackie Robinson, H. Ralph Bunch, Booker T. Washington, Carter G. Woodson, and use those as examples to Black kids, but they never did teach the deep-rooted history of what made America what it is. They never did teach the deep history that slavery was a evil institution. They would never, and still would never now in school, teach that white supremacy and racism still exists. And so there's an effort, I think, of a lot of white parents to protect their little children from hearing the truth. That's the bottom line. The truth is not going to destroy anybody. The truth will make us all stronger. And I think Black people, we need to be careful about getting all bent out of shape over this. That was a report just this week, I think, some private school somewhere that was teaching Hitler to the children, And so when they so-called took prayer out of public school, there was no cause for people to get bent out of shape. We had churches. That was a church responsibility anyway. And so yes, we have a problem with with what's going on. It's okay. Put me back on the list, please.
Of course. Thank you, Larry.
I have a clarifying question, sorry.
Clarifying question from Louise, Larry.
Yeah, teaching Hitler, what do you mean? Teaching the history of what he
No,
did? Or?
actually, they were teaching the positive side of history. It was something I saw on the news, and
No, about Hitler, you said particularly. What's
about Hitler. They were teaching the positive side of Hitler to the children that were in that class. Yes.
Okay, didn't know there was one, but never mind. Thanks.
Kind of scary.
Yeah.
Very scary. Thank you, Larry. And I have your name back on the end of the list as it stands now. Okay, Glenn, you're up. Leonetta,
Okay.
I see your finger.
Leonetta had two fingers up. I don't know if she has a clarifying question. Oh, just
one finger.
one.
Okay.
Okay.
Glenn?
Okay, like I was saying about the census, that he's, I don't see him having any conviction on what he's standing for, no more than I see him no different than Tucker Carlson on Fox. Was ever going to make him money, he don't have no scruples about it. He'll say anything. He will destroy this country to make him millions of dollars to gather the people who want to hear that what he's spewing out, the untruths. Do you know that George Wallace was not the racist in his beginning in politics? George Wallace used to be fair to African Americans, but he couldn't get elected. So to get elected, he changed his stripes. And the same thing with DeSantis. Even though you can go back and say DeSantis, before he became governor, he was against this or against that. The man had long-term strategies. He probably came out of high school, know what it was going to take to be elected to be governor, what type of things he was going to have to say. Don't mean that that's really what he believed. So that's all I have to say on that.
Thank you, Glenn. Okay, Louise, I'm writing your name down right now. Nancy? All right. I'm scanning the screen. Okay. Phyllis, you're up.
It doesn't matter if Ron DeSantis or Trump or George Wallace really believed what they were spewing. They're still spewing it, and they are doing damage and harm to people. I don't need to give them a test to see how sincere they are in their fascism. They're creating fascism. And people say this a lot about a lot of Republicans, that they don't really mean what they say, but they certainly do what they say. and they enact policies that harm all kinds of people. And, you know, DeSantis is, he's already had the president of New College fired. Sorry, that's my cat sneezing. Sorry. He's had that president fired. He plans to hire all new faculty at New College, which I understand right now they have about 700 students, and students go there, have the freedom to say what their gender identity is and their pronouns, and it's a very free, open, accepting place for them. And so what's going to happen to those students when this new president and faculty that he puts in place come in? It's going to be devastating to those students who chose that school probably for the safety that they would feel there. And I'm glad that Beatrice brought up queer theory and Black theory, that, you know, DeSantis thinks those two things aren't connected because, of course, he's the expert. He's wrong. He is dead wrong. And I can't state how strongly he is wrong. And I don't want to hear people saying that he's not dangerous just because he doesn't really believe it. He says what he needs to get elected, and he wants to be elected president of this country so he can do more damage, because they are terrified of white people in this country not being the majority, and they see it coming and they're terrified. That's why they're doing all of this. Thank you. Bill has his finger up.
Bill, I see your finger. Is that to get on the list or to ask a question?
It was one finger.
You was sort of turned sideways. Okay, I have to give your name, Bill.
And Cindy's waving her hand around too.
Okay, Cindy's jumped to the bottom of the screen. I've got it. Oh, good. The list is growing. Okay. Thanks, Phyllis. Beatrice, you're up.
Yeah, just a couple of things. First of all, when Carter G. Woodson began Negro History Week, she chose February because Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass's birthdays were in that month. And gratefully, there is an extension, you know, to a month, but it's not, you know, people say, well, it's the shortest month. Well, the other thing, in terms of DeSantis, I do agree with Glenn that he is a true demagogue, but as Phyllis was saying, the problem is that his philosophy encourages others, and there are other governors who are looking at this AP course and wanting to do like he's doing. And you're right, he's not really for anything. He doesn't have a moral center, a moral core. He was against vaccines, he was for vaccines, he wants everybody. But the point is that we do not need to engage him on these culture wars, because he's going to continue that. He's going to continue to stir up his base. What needs to happen is that people need to start asking him, particularly in the media, what about the conditions of your citizens? And, you know, what's going on with healthcare in your state? Ask about the people, because I mean, he's going to continue to spew this foolishness. When I was, this is going to another, when I was an assistant principal at a school, I made sure that every month we celebrated somebody's achievements and accomplishments, and we had Jewish American Heritage and African American Heritage and European American Heritage Month and Indigenous people. And because if you do not, and I know, Louise, people are right that all this needs to be in all the history, but if you just have it's not going to happen. It's not, if you do not focus on especially marginalized groups, it is not going to happen. And people will not learn about the contributions, the culture, and all of other groups other than their own, and will believe that what you see today in terms of African Americans and some of the circumstances that we're in is because we just didn't do anything. We're just lazy. We came over here and we didn't do like the other immigrants and come. I mean, we need to have a deep dive into the history of particular groups. Otherwise, we don't learn them. And I think that's extremely important. Thanks.
Thank you, Beatrice. Larry?
You know, because DeSantis objected to the queer theory, being taught and being labeled a dangerous man because he rejected queer theory. I guess that would make me a dangerous man also, because I too reject the queer theory being taught in public schools, whatever one might deem the queer theory to be. But everything that's normal ain't necessarily natural. So some things that's done may be normal and popular, but that doesn't make it necessary and contrary to nature. But one of our great challenges is how will we ever get rid of racism? Will we ever get rid of white supremacy? I don't think so in my lifetime. I believe as long as we have the one drop rule, we're going to have racism. As long as the one drop rule exists and somebody like a Kamala Harris could be classified as Black, we're going to have racism. So can it ever be abolished? I don't think so, not in my lifetime. We keep fighting for what's right and just keep fighting the good fight.
Thank you, Larry. Louise has a clarifying question.
Yeah, sorry. So what is the gay theory that's being taught in schools?
Whatever it is, it's just a queer theory. You know, I mean, I know it by the name, but I
No,
also,
but is it being taught in schools? Where did you hear that?
well, I heard
I work in a school and there's no queer theory being taught there.
I heard DeSantis say it. I'm not saying it is being taught, but DeSantis said it was. So whether or not it is or not, I don't know. I don't know.
I see. Okay.
I'm looking at the printout of the topic that we read. And one of the topics, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, it's this blue sheet that's part of the reading that you did that's online. And it's topic number 4.19, Black Queer Studies. We have to encourage and develop practices whereby queerness isn't a surrender to the status quo of race, class, gender, and sexuality. It means building forms of queerness that reject the given realities of the government and the market. So if you have time or if you wish to go back and look at the article that is the topic of our discussion this Saturday morning, it's this little blue chart that's part of the article. And there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 topics that were submitted by the college boards to the AP African American Studies course.
Sorry, I didn't see that.
Okay, yeah. So it stands out because it's blue. And when I printed out the copy of the article, I made sure I hit the color key so I could look at this myself. So there's intersectionality and activism, Black queer studies, movements for Black lives, Black feminist literary thought, the reparations movement, which is a hot, sticky issue for some people as well, Black study and the Black struggle in the 21st century. So it is listed as Black queer studies, or it's second on the chart right here. Okay. All right, Leonette, I haven't forgotten about you. I just wanted to tell the group it's in the topic, and I know you all saw it when you read the topic for discussion. Leonette?
I'm next? I'm
Yes.
next? Oh, okay. Reverend Larry, I think the article that you said that you read, there's some homeschooling, I think it was in the state of New Jersey, that these homeschoolers were teaching their children using not Hitler's writing as to teach the children how to write, and then they were also teaching in their history lessons. They were the history lessons were about the Hitler from that Hitler's point of view. I just wanted to give you that information. And that was in the news last week. I think that's what you were talking about. But if it's not, I'm just giving you that information. Mr. DeSantis, I'm gonna call him Mr. Mr. DeSantis is, he's a demagogue. He's a politician in the worst way. Politician, he goes with the flow. I don't know if everybody on this call knows that the state of Florida has a horrible, horrible history in racism. It go out, and I don't even know if in the state of if the people there have heard know their history, the lynching, I mean, it just goes on and on, the things that have happened in Florida, and not only to Black people but from Hispanics too, and so and how dare he? You know, some people, I guess it's white privilege. Think that they can decide what's for my good. You know, there should be, and what's wrong with finding out the truth? What's the danger of that? I don't understand. What's the danger of finding out truly what happened?
You can get back on the list, Lee, and then
Okay,
you want to put your name on?
I'll raise my hand again.
Okay, all right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 7 people still on the list, and I'm looking at the bottom of my computer screen. It says 10:51. So we have Louise, Nancy, Pedro, Bill, Cindy, and Phyllis. So Louise, you're next.
Okay, well, it was a long time ago when I raised my finger and I've kind of forgotten. I think it was actually Phyllis that answered what I wanted to say, which was, doesn't matter if you're only doing it for publicity, you know, as far as George Wallace or DeSantis is doing, they're doing it just to get votes. It's still bad, and it's maybe even worse. You know, they really don't have a soul if they're doing that. God, what else was it? Oh, and Beatrice said about how it's never going to happen, teaching history. Yeah, in an ideal world, we would love to have proper history taught, but you're right, we need to focus on the individual cultures and races. But yeah, there was something else, and of course, it's gone.
It'll come back to you, Louise. Somebody will say something else. It'll trigger your memory.
Maybe.
Thank you. Nancy, you're next.
Yes, I wanted to say that I agree that DeSantis is doing this to garner votes to align with the conservative right, to get them to follow his agenda. And he does have higher aspirations for national office. But what concerns me the most is, number one, you're banning history, all right? And to me, that just smacks of Nazi Germany. I've been saying that for a long time, that the country's leaders and the Republican Party seem to follow a Nazi doctrine or practices as far as limiting what people can read, limiting book banning, movies, anything that has a more liberal agenda and whatnot. But I think that is my choice as an individual to choose or have access to choose what I want to read, what I want to see. Okay. He also said that there was no educational value in this course. Well, when I went to school, all they taught you was European history. And what educational value was that? I don't need to know about Socrates from 33,000 years ago, whenever that he existed. I don't need to know about that. Okay, I need to know about what happened in this country since it was formed, because this is my country. Greece is not my country. And so there just were a lot of things that I feel like he's stepping out of his boundaries to enforce his beliefs on other people. And people, had supposedly, if this is a truly a free country, I have the right to choose what I choose to believe and not to believe.
Thank you, Nancy. Pedro?
Yeah, so Dr. King, among other things, warned us about these giant triplets of oppression, that promote injustice. And they were extreme materialism, militarism, and racism. And, his work towards the end of his life was really around the poor and the preeminence, I think, of the extreme materialism, of the profit-driven deal. And he was very clear on indicating what changes must happen. He warned us to be careful not to allow profit motives to become more important than people, or extreme wealth inequality driven by extreme materialism will promote what? It promotes war, militarism. It promotes racism. And so the one thing about our meetings that often percolates up is we are so critical of Republicans, but we are all victims of this system that we should be masters of rather than the system being masters of us. And I would just suggest that where you have ideologues like DeSantis, for sure, you have people in the Democratic Party that promote this extreme materialism, this extreme wealth inequality that drives what? You have to have racism to divide people so that they don't see the real cause of their own perceived injustice, which is this, this systemic thing here. And I would say the same thing about militarism. We're all over the world. In Yemen, I bring this up a lot, that 700,000 people died in all of these countries, and all of that, the common denominator is the US militarism. So,
Thank you, Pedro. The time is 10:57. So if there's anyone who hasn't had a chance to speak, raise your finger now, because you will get a chance to speak at the end of our session in the roundup. So if you haven't had a chance to speak, now's the time. Bill, Cindy, Phyllis, and Larry are the next four people. So Bill, you're next.
Several things. Pick up on what Phyllis said about New College. New College is populated by very progressive Democrats. And I've been there when my cousin was a student, and there will be an absolute rebellion against what DeSantis is trying to do. But there's alumni and current students who came to the school under the pretext that it was a progressive liberal school. So it'll be interesting to see how he succeeds or doesn't succeed. I wanted to say several people are talking about Black history should be part of American history, and I agree completely. I have found that what is taught in the schools was very superficial, and I did some research a while back on family history, and it caused me to look into the historical accuracy or historical facts where my ancestors went, and none of the things that happened to them were taught in American history. And it wasn't just for racism, but that was a big driver, of course, but it was also just to simplify the narrative. And I also agree with Pedro Martin Luther King and Muhammad Ali realized the Black struggle was tied up with US imperialism. And they both argued against the Vietnam War, much to the chagrin of Johnson, who that was a fatal flaw on his part. So that's all. I just wanted to follow on to several people that said that I really appreciated their comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Cindy?
Unmute.
I'm sorry. I thought I had done it. Is it okay now? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. One of the problems all through this whole idea is we all answer that education is the answer, but the problem is education is not accurate because the publishers who make the books
Mm.
are very selective in what's included. And that's where a lot of change needs to happen. But there are committees for each school district that choose the history books. And it takes the longest time for them to go through the process and select the right books. And all the people have to agree. And it's a bunch of baloney. To teach history, you need people who know history. You need teachers who know history, and maybe some sort of discussion among teachers. I taught kindergarten, so I had to work at a level that the kids could understand. But you can teach African-American history, American history, the whole bit to kindergartners. You just put it in terms, simpler language, not so many big words, but it's very comprehensible by kindergartners. Their empathy is amazing and they get it. I don't think there's anything more important to teach little bitty ones. The empathy is astonishing. Unfortunately, an awful lot of schools in New Orleans are all Black or all white, and that's sad. But we need to work toward changing that. That's it.
Thank you, Cindy. Time is zooming by here. It's 11:02. So we have Phyllis and then Larry.
Thanks. So I would say that I think that anybody who thinks they have the moral right to judge other people and to enact laws and rules or to condemn those people is a dangerous person. I put a couple of links in the chat about one's about 16 or 17 queer Black people throughout history, and the other one is Harlem. The Harlem Renaissance had a lot of queer people involved in it, and it starts with a quote from Henry Louis Gates Jr. So yeah, I think that we should all be careful about dismissing the people who support fascism, who support white supremacy, who support misogyny, especially misogynoir, and who are homophobic and transphobic. And I am fully saying phobic. So it's discouraging to hear people in this group support what is a tenet of white supremacy, whether they know it or not. Thanks, Marion.
Thank you, Phyllis. Larry, you're the clarifying question from Cindy.
You got to unmute.
Unmute, Cindy.
The last sentence you said, Phyllis, I didn't understand. There's a word I missed.
Tenet of white supremacy? Is that, can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but
I said people are, when they support the fascist people or the fascist ideas, they're actually supporting tenets of white
oh,
supremacy.
absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, got it. Thank you.
All right, Phyllis just spoke. Larry,
Somebody said once, in politics, there are no permanent friends and no permanent enemies, only permanent interests. And DeSantis is playing to his interests in Florida. There's a heavy Hispanic population in Florida, and they're currently coming in, and that population has aligned itself with the Republican Party. DeSantis recognized that. Whatever his personal views might be, he is playing to that constituent. Carter G. Woodson also made reference that the Negro, as we were called back then, was the only group in America who entrusted the education of their children to others. And so I don't want to see Black people keep getting blown out of shape by too many things. We have means at our disposal that we could teach history, Black history, as it ought to be taught. There was a guy named, I think he was with Public Enemy, a group called Public Enemy, and his name was Luke something. But anyway, he thanked Ron DeSantis for what Ron DeSantis did. He thanked him. He said, because it now make him more determined than ever to teach the true history of the African-American community. So we shouldn't get blown out of shape. We have too many tools at our disposal. And that's all for now. Thank you.
thank you, Larry.
Cindy
in fact,
has a clarifying question.
Cindy has a clarifying question. Unmute, Cindy.
In what context would that response about African American history, where would you convey that? Are you going to write a book? You're going to do a lecture? How do you get that out there besides talking to your friends?
Well, by communicating it in our institutions, through our politicians, our homes, our families.
So you're talking about writing letters and talking to people.
I'm talking about writing letters, talking to people, setting up teaching institutions, whatever it takes to get the message out. If it's not going to be properly incorporated in the public.
I agree. We need something.
Point of order. This is back and forth
Okay.
now.
Who's next?
That's the end of the list. Now, I'd like to make a suggestion. Ordinarily, we would stop at around 11:15. Nora and Jean were the only persons that did not speak so far. Correct me if I'm wrong. And you all could have the opportunity to make some final remarks, and then we could proceed with our roundup discussions. Would that be agreeable to everyone?
Yeah.
That's what we
Nod
normally
heads.
do.
That's
what we
how it's
normally
done,
do.
girl.
Phyllis?
I'm
What do
saying
you
that's what we normally do. The people who
Okay.
haven't spoken get 2 minutes in the wrap up and the rest of us get 1 minute.
Okay, and Louise, what did you say?
The same thing. I said that's how we do it.
Okay, all right. So that was the end of Larry made the final comments, and the only persons that I have, and as I said, correct me if I'm wrong, Jean and Nora. So Jean, since your first name begins with J, and Nora, your first name begins with N, I'll take J first, and Jean is my middle name.
Oh,
So-
great. Yes.
So I'll show a little favoritism. And you can speak first.
Okay. Well, I do have a couple comments. As to Larry's talking about bringing up African American history in our institutions. For those who have PBS, I mean, there's so many programs this month and all year round. I mean, they have Harriet Tubman, Douglas. Anyway, a number of people throughout the year, but this year, like they've got a program, it's a 4-part, I think, about the resiliency of the African American community throughout history. They're repeating the civil rights movements. They're doing everything. There's so much out there for people to learn from. And in speaking of learning, the children at a very young age can recognize what's going on. There was a little article that I read. A 5-year-old was reading Star-Bellied Sneetches, which if anybody ever read Dr. Seuss to their children or grandchildren, it's a group, Star-Bellied, the Sneetches with stars on their belly were favored. So then someone came along and he said, I can put Sneetches, stars on your bellies. So they kept going back and forth. The bottom line is the little 5-year-old who's reading this said, this is just what white people did to Black people, you know? So he recognized right away the racism that was in that story. The other thing is that California now apparently is introducing an AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islander history in their schools. Everybody's got a history. And yes, it'd be great if we all had American history being just everybody included. And to be perfectly honest, African Americans built this country. And there's just no reason why it's not being included except for white supremacy. I don't know how we get rid of those, but we've all got to stand up for what's right and do the best we can. Thank you. And Bill, it takes a while for that cold to go away. I've had it for, I think, 10 days and it's finally abating.
Thank you, Jean. Nora?
Yeah, I just want to say that I care very deeply about all the issues that we talk about, and I value each of your contributions, opinions, but this is an extremely anxiety-producing format for me. And I just want to say that my silence doesn't indicate in any way that I'm just not there with you listening. And I'll just do the best I can. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Nora. And of course, we're right on time. It's 11:13. So thank you all for your contributions to our discussion today. We're going to have our wrap up. And we're going to start with Nancy, and that'll be a minute. Nancy, okay, she's on mute.
Very good discussion. I did have some more to say, but now I can't remember what it was. But very good discussion. I just think that we really do need to pay more attention to these little things that are being, taken away, bans on this, bans on that. Pretty soon you'll be back to the 1950s, the way, certain people want this country to be back, and it'll never be the same. We'll never go back to that. So I think, and we better pay more attention to all this infighting that we have going on over culture wars and whatnot, and pay attention to that balloon that's floating over this country. All right.
Oh, yes. Pedro, thank you, Nancy. Pedro. Pedro, can you unmute? Can you hear me, Pedro?
You're on, Pedro.
Pedro?
I don't think he can hear us.
All right, yeah, I hope is he awake? He blinked, okay. Pedro, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can now. Sorry, my
Okay.
internet was kind of flaky.
Okay,
Sorry about that.
yeah, my
Um,
internet is acting crazy too.
Yeah, and yeah, anyhow, I just wanted to kind of just continue. I guess that the thing about the extreme materialism to me, I think is so important. And we have these cultural wars, as Nancy was saying, and they're all important issues, but it's also a kind of like a shiny coin. It's kind of like we get distracted from reminding ourselves of what underlies the forces that drive all this nonsense and injustice and such. And I just keep going back to Dr. King. I've just had the pleasure of going back to his Beyond Vietnam speech and time again, every time for the last 20 years. And this year, it just really struck me when he mentions these three triplets. You know, we're here at a time where we've actually sanctioned 1/3 of the world's people. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Pedro. Larry?
Yes, I think everything that an individual or a group may want to do is not going to be allowed in a just society. There must be laws, ethics, morals. No society can exist without morals. I understand we all have different views on what morality is, but because one person's view on morality may differ from another person's view on morality, does not make that person a homo anything. It's just that such a person have moral values that may not line up with somebody else. And someone may see prostitute walking the street as okay. Others may see it as a distraction and immoral. People are entitled to their points of views and shouldn't be demonized if their views differ from others.
Okay, thank you, Larry. Bill, your final remarks?
Good article and timely. Thanks for Marion for introducing it. I think we all are opposed to what DeSantis is doing, but we have different perspectives on that. It's great to hear everybody's perspective. So thank you.
You're welcome. Cynthia? Cindy?
Cynthia's okay.
I have a friend named Cynthia, and I was thinking about her yesterday. Okay,
Okay.
Cindy, your final remarks. That's why I called you Cynthia.
I still am, if it says mute, is it muted?
No, it's not muted. No, oh, it's muted
Okay,
now.
now
You
it
were
is.
unmuted.
I had it transposed in my brain. Sorry, the brain is getting old. Valuable article. I think we need to pursue this whole discussion more, and I'm sure we will. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Nora?
She's already been.
Oh,
Didn't she?
She was a 2-minute person. You don't want to do a 1 minute, Nora? All right, that's fine. Louise?
Yeah, so firstly to Nora, obviously we know you're listening and absorbing, and if you want to maybe write your comments in chat in the future instead of talking them, that would be a way to go. That's
Okay.
totally cool. Oh my God, too many things. Larry, you said a moral society, and yet everyone's morals are different. So how is that possibly ever going to work, right? I mean, impossible. Darn it, and there was one more thing. Oh, I know. The World Wide Web, right? Where it's been great, a blessing and a curse, obviously. But to be honest, and I think Nancy touched on it, that our society would probably be like the Nazi society if we didn't really have the interweb to connect like-minded people or to show the truth, somewhere. I think we would have been more brainwashed or spoon-fed bullshit.
You're over a
Sorry.
minute.
No, I've got the
Excuse
clock
me.
right in front of me, brother. It's right here, and it's just about to go off.
Please let her finish.
Glenn, you're out of order.
Please.
That was
Continue,
pretty much-
Louise.
That was pretty much it.
All right. Thank you, Louise.
Right on time.
Please don't interrupt. Again, Glenn, Phyllis.
Yeah, that was rude. I want to agree with Louise, what she said about whose morals get to be the morals that everybody has to follow, and that's the point. And I question the morals of anybody who thinks that how people love and who they love and how they feel about their own bodies is immoral. What's immoral is harming other people and saying things about them that cause them to want to kill themselves. There is such a high suicide rate among transgender and queer youth. People with any kind of voice have got to stop condemning them for very false reasons, because it's just fear of something you don't understand. That is all it is. They are perfectly normal human beings who just want to love and be. Let them be. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. Leonetta?
Susan, I love this topic. Marion is going to make me pay attention to decisis, because I just wrote him off as a nutcase that needs to go into therapy. But I am going to, Nancy, I'm going to pay more closely attention to him. If this man becomes our president, Lord help us. I'm going to have to do some more reading for myself to find out what would happen to African American people if this country returned to be a fascist state. I don't know, would we be rounded up like the Jews were in Germany? I just don't know what would happen to us. I know we would assume that in a fascist society, there would be no space for African Americans in that society. That's what I'm assuming, but I need to read up on it to find it out. And to ask the Phyllis to my opinion on what's going to happen to this college, if they change the professors and the president, the students are going to leave, and that is the goal of DeSantis, is to close the university, and so that's the plot.
Thank you, Leonetta. Glenn?
Yeah, I agree with what Phyllis said about, no matter whether they,
Sorry, that was a mistake.
yeah, well, start me over.
I am, babe.
Just continue, Glenn.
Well, I say I agree with what Phyllis said, that we, no matter what his intent, DeSantis' intentions is bad. What we have to do is make good arguments of what he's talking against, what he's talking about. Make good arguments, and also, if you're worried about your children not knowing African American history, well, you take the initiative. You make sure that your child you don't have to go to school to learn African American history. I didn't learn African American history in school. I learned it outside of school. That's it.
Thank you, Glenn. Did I cover everybody? Because people were shifting on my computer screen. Did everyone have an opportunity to make their final remarks? Okay.
I think so.
All right. I want to thank everybody this morning for participating in this very, I think, important topic. You have a man who is the governor of one of our states in this country, And he has the position to influence people. And unfortunately, it's in a negative way. We don't need any more negativity brought down upon the heads of our citizens. I am so glad that you all expressed the comments that you did make. People, some unfortunately in our country to this very day, think that Black people were no more than enslaved people that were brought, and I prefer to say kidnapped and brought across the Atlantic Ocean and put in a position of involuntary servitude. So during my 41 years in the classroom, I took advantage of my position and I introduced all of the children, not just to the contributions of white people, but our indigenous people who were here for centuries before some other folks crossed the ocean and stole the land. Because the last school where I was employed for 28 years had a very diverse population of children from 4 different continents. Whenever the observance came up on the calendar for Indigenous Peoples Week or the Hispanic Heritage Week, Christopher Columbus, the kids and I talked about that. I have a little book here. It's one of 12 books that I have about Black folks and their contributions. And Cindy, I shared this with my little students. Now it's a paperback book. It's one of 12 books that I still have that I didn't leave behind when I retired. And it was specifically for children. And it is listed, it's arranged in such a way that the teacher can take the pages out of the book and print them. And the kids will get an opportunity to understand the important contributions that people made. So we seem to forget that Black women also made positive contributions to this country. Gwendolyn Brooks was a poet. Sojourner Truth was an early abolitionist. Abolitionist, I'm saying that wrong, my tongue is tied. Did you all know that there was a Black woman astronaut, Mae Jemison, the first Black woman to go to the outer reaches of space? And all of our children, not just our Black children, all of our children need to know this. Women can do things. So this little book, I pulled it off the shelf. As I said, I had about 30 and I left some of them behind at the last school where I taught, but I kept this one. And those simple things like the lawn sprinkler, the fire escape ladder, the dustpan, the egg beater, the bicycle frame, the golf tee, that little thing you stick in the ground and knock the golf ball off, the piano, the player piano, the horseshoe, and the refrigerator were all invented by Black men. And I especially like the one about the refrigerator because that involved something where, you know, how do you keep the food cold and how do you keep the food from spoiling? But these men, J. Smith, Joseph Winters, Lloyd Ray, Willis Johnson, Isaac Johnson, George Grant, Joseph Dickinson, Oscar Brown, George Stannard, they all invented these things. And of course, something that's all over the entire world, the traffic light was invented by a Black man, Garrett Morgan. So we all have contributed something. Those of us sitting in this group here have done something that's going to benefit our fellow human beings. Years ago, when I was about 19 years old, I met Langston Hughes, the poet. It was found out later he was gay. I didn't know that. I didn't know that word gay. And I also, I have photographs that were taken at a luncheon that was given because I'd won a creative writing contest. I wrote a short story. When I was in college, I wrote several short stories and poetry. And my short story won me a trip to New York, and I met Langston Hughes. And I went to a luncheon that was given for me and two other recipients. I won the short story category. A young man from Alabama won poetry, and another girl from Tennessee, Memphis, Tennessee, won the essay division. So I met Langston Hughes. In fact, he sat next to me at the table at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. So these Black men have done good things, and we've all benefited from the lawnmower or the lawn sprinkler, and most of all the refrigerator. So we have to be very careful. I'm not saying we here in this group, but those of us that out there, and you know some people like that want to write people off. They didn't do anything. They're stupid. No, they're not. And this little book, I treasure it, and I'm going to give it to my grandchildren. I've given them books in the past that were appropriate for their age because they're 8 and 4 years old. And I want them to understand that they can be proud to be who they are. And that even though Nana is this old, tired lady whose back hurts all the time, whose knee hurts all the time, I want them to know that I love them, and I want them to love themselves. So we as human beings have to be very, very careful about how we want to just write certain people off. And this man in Florida is really dangerous. I don't wish him any ill will, but people are going to have to use their common sense and try to understand that he might be saying some things and doing some things that are going to benefit you, but in the long run, he's hurting your fellow human beings. And you have to try to accept the fact that there are people here on this earth that are going to be here until it's their time to leave. Now, whether you believe in the Creator or the Almighty or not, we all are not going to live forever. So why spin your wheels or waste your time or whatever you want to call it, denigrating, trying to humiliate and trying to demean what your fellow citizens of color have created or have done to help make their communities and really the world a better place in which to live. So I'll get off my soapbox now, but I did want to show Cindy this book, so Bill remind her. It's called Famous Black Americans, just a little paper book, little paperback book, but it has little drawings and things, and I just was flipping pages, and who did I flip the page to? Martin Luther King. And some people think, well, Martin Luther King is the only Black man that ever did anything of any relevance. But this little book has people in here that you never even heard of that did contribute things. You're muted, Cindy. Unmute, Cindy. You're saying
Should I
something.
stop the recording now?
Yes, if you want to.